What's up, people? I'm Shaggy, the opinionated hippie, and today I'm going to deep dive into Cardiac's discography. Their studio albums only. They're officially released studio albums, and the reason I'm doing this is I have received several comments. Boom, 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 right there. Requesting that I do a deep dive into the Cardiacs, with the promise in one of them that they might become my favorite band, which is, hey, that's quite a promise. So I'm pretty much doing this for four reasons. One, persistence in a request. Two, when I had heard the Cardiacs before, but I have not heard any of their albums. I knew the name. I do know that they've always been compared to, like, I've heard comparisons to like Zappa or like XTC on acid, um, uh, really manic, frantic type stuff. So that was a draw. Is that what I'd heard about them was intriguing. Three, they only had five albums. There's a sixth to be announced, called LSD, which has not been released, but apparently it's in the works or with some leftover recordings. Apparently their lead singer passed away. Maybe the heart and soul of the band, from what I'm gathering, from what I've listened to. Haven't really done any sort of informational deep dive into them. I've only listened to the five albums a number of times, formed an opinion on them. Um, and so the asterisk on this is, like, I don't feel like I can justifiably, like, understand this band in like a matter of a short period of time. I'm going to throw out a whole bunch of like reference points for what this band reminds me of. Um, and maybe that'll give you a good sense of why, if anything, I'm overwhelmed by them at this point, but I really enjoyed the overwhelming experience. So the comparisons I think you can make to this band are like Zappa, a really happy Mr. Bungle, like the happy circusy songs on there, not the really dark metal songs, but the more like whimsical psychedelic songs on like Mr. Bungle's first album in particular. Captain Beefheart to some degree, maybe not as that raw bluesy vibe. XTC, but only XTC in their early years, if they were taking lots of psychedelic drugs and drinking a whole truckload of coffee. I think those are the key comparison points. And so while I don't feel like I really have a grasp on what this band is about, like Frank Zappa's more difficult stuff, like just random stuff, like something like Florentine Pogan, right? I'll play that song to friends. I'm like, oh, do you really like this song? And they're just like, oh, like all those just random like detours and musical, like sort of, let's go just jog over here for 4 bars and do this weird little thing. For me, that sounds completely natural. And the first time I heard it, I thought it was thrilling, but it was hard to like follow. Now I'm like, I anticipate those and I can sing them and hum them, stuff like that. I feel like with Cardiacs, a band I'm going to go listen to a whole bunch more, I will have a better sense of like which one of their complete random, hey, let's go this way really quickly for 30 seconds and let's go this way really quickly, like these random musical detours. I think I'll have a better understanding of how those work after many more listens. But for now, to show that this persistent commenter, that I appreciate his comments, and that I am actually listening to these bands, here are my initial rankings of their five albums, after listening to each one maybe 3 or 4 times. And then I'm going to continue listening to this and probably come back in, like, I don't know, maybe 6 months, maybe at the end of the year, early next year, and have come back with what I hope is a more like fulfilling, satisfying understanding of the band. What is the Zappa connection? I don't know. Honestly, because I've not researched this band, I don't know anything other than these five albums, other than I think if you like really wacky, crazy, eccentric, almost schizophrenic Zappa type music, I don't see why you wouldn't like this. Oh, and it's very British. Yeah, very British. It's very British. Like, you can tell that this band is from somewhere in the United Kingdom, 100%. So maybe not British, very United Kingdom. I'm an American. That it kind of blends together at times, and I don't want to call somebody something that they're not, as far as wearing what my thing's wearing that on that island. But yeah, so I enjoyed this. And after I make this video, I'm actually going to like read about them and learn about them and then do like a really serious deep dive into their music. But for now, my initial thoughts on Cardiac's officially released 5 studio albums. Sorry for rambling. On to number 5. My number 5th of theirs is their 3rd studio album, which came out in 1992. I would say this one is, of the 5, I think sounds like the most straightforward of the albums. I mean, they're definitely a late 70s sort of post-punk, new wave, XTC-ish, not quite Gang of Four-ish, but very just that almost Talking Heads-ish at time. Just that like a lot of lyrics. There's obviously like a singular frontman who seems to be driving this. The lyrics tend to be about life in general. At times feel stream of conscious in like a Malcolmist way, where they make sense, but then do they make sense? Are they just clever? But these seem a little more focused, maybe at times a little darker. And the music is just crazy all over the place. Like there's a groove and then, oh no, now we're in another groove. Then we're back to this groove and then we're doing a tweak on that first groove. And it's just crazy all over the map stuff. This one seems like it's still weird in a Cardiac sense, but it seems like once the song starts, we kind of stay on that same block for the entirety of the song instead of ending up like 19 blocks away in a completely different city or different suburb. I think the second half of the album gets better than the first. The second half, we have a couple songs that kind of remind me more of their first 2 albums, that really quirky, hectic, frantic type stuff, which I really like. The other stuff is in no way bad, but I felt least compelled to go revisit this one so far. The opening is weird, big choral, classical, big opening. Then we get some like nice, quirky. The next song is like a nice, just quirky, tight rock type thing, like an early XTC type vibe. We get some good rock grooves in here, some good new wave energy on this. We get a little ballad about midway through. What is the name of that song? Helen in Heaven. Day Is Gone is a pretty good big sounding song with some nice, like a short little acoustic guitar break, which at the time thinking this was like, it felt like just fresh air in the crazy hecticness that is most of this stuff. The closing Snakes a Sleeping was kind of a slow opening thing with like this big just pounding beat that comes in and almost like a proggy middle. Really calm outro. It's like an 8.5 minute song. Most of their songs are right around 3.5, 4 minutes. There's a number of songs that approach the 8-minute mark in which they allow themselves times to breathe a little more. And the contrast between those more like, wow, this is like a normal rock, prog rock sort of thing, between the crazy hecticness of their normal stuff, is really good. And I think the last song on here is good because it has a really, really long, quiet outro. And then, of course, when you're like, if you were listening to this and falling asleep, the very end, it's just like a big noise comes in and wakes you up. You're like, yeah, you knew it was coming, but you almost kind of wish they didn't. But a good album. I think of the 5, though, it stood out as the one I'm least excited to like go back and revisit again. Like I feel like I almost already kind of have a grasp on this one. Good stuff, but not as weird as their other 4. But that's number 5, Heaven Born and Ever Bright. My number 4 is their number 2nd, 1989, On Land and in the Sea. And there's 2 other bands in listening to this in my notes that I reference a number of times. I reference Madness, Our House, Night Boat to Cairo, House of Fun, Welcome to the House of Fun, but only if all the members of the band had been locked in that house in the middle of their street for like years, and then somebody dropped in a whole bunch of electric Kool-Aid in there and told them they had to produce an album in like 24 hours. That's what a lot of this music sounds like. It sounds insane. It's crazy. There's great horn use in here. Just frantic, chaotic, crazy. I wrote hard to truly assess what I even think about this stuff. But I liked it. And there's a lot of really, really good moments throughout, but like little short passages that they never come back to. You're like, oh, that's pretty good. But I'm hoping to like get to understand more. Also, there is a song towards the end, and I think this vibe also pops up in a couple other songs, where there's interesting, almost sort of proggy passages, and the construction of the songs and the sort of musical interludes with the vocals, which are, we have a lot of lyrics in these, remind me of the Fiery Furnaces. Not their more straightforward bluesy quirkiness, but when they got into the proggy with like Bitter Tea, Blueberry Boat, the one with can't remember the name of it. The one after that. Blanket on that Fiery Furnaces album. But they're weird, convoluted, proggy stuff. I got some of that, especially in the last song, which is like 8.5 minutes. There are moments in here where I'm feeling that kind of weirdness, which is a little more under control, which is weird because that's on the same album where they're all in a house going crazy on psychedelics. Some pretty great songs on here. Mare's Nest, I note down, kind of starts out normal with some cool like piano type punchy vibe. Always some really good piano on here. A song about isolation. And then there's just a lot of really cool passages in it that sound like somebody who's going crazy from being isolated. It's almost like a soundtrack to somebody's mental breakdown. I thought that was cool. The last song, The Ever So Closely Guarded Line, like a really nice, quiet, slow intro that has this almost metronomic click about it. And then about 40 seconds in, just weirdness and like psychedelic circus vibes. And then these prog keyboard sweeps and just a lot of really little interesting passages that really make it feel epic. The first half of the album, there's a song called Arnold, which just has this kind of this awesome normal guitar riff, like just like just an awesome opening riff, kind of straightforward, but with just a lot of really nice guitar playing throughout it. But just for the most part, this is like hyper frantic stuff. I have Mr. Bungle on acid in here. I got XTC on acid. I got a lot of bands just going crazy that you listen to like something like Mr. Bungle or early XTC and you're like, man, this is just like, these guys are on a lot. What's going on? Can't they just like be normal for 8 bars? And then you listen to this and you're like, oh no, they were being normal. That's what normal sounds like. But yeah, no, this is good stuff. Good stuff. But it gets better. My number 4, On Land and in the Sea. My third by Cardiacs is A Little Man and a House and the Whole World Window. Came out in 1988. I think they had released a couple EPs prior to this, and this was their first like full length album. My notes for this, I have Toll referenced a couple times that I think there's a flute in this, that it was a little maybe a little proggier aspect to this. And so I had Toll mentioned a couple times, and I wrote at the very end that this is essentially like, if it was a concept album, the concept would be a band consisting of clowns playing progressive jazz art rock. It's a fun, bouncy, hectic, crazy, manic debut that, considering that this was their debut, I honestly thought that things were just going to get a lot weirder from here or drop off considerably from here. And they kind of did neither. They kind of stayed the same. At times they got weirder, at times they dropped off, but they kind of stayed in this range. Like this band came out with like an identity. Opens up with this, like the first song is this dramatic orchestral intro with this very British, whimsical, arty voice starting to sing almost immediately. With these almost big rock type movements going on, but everything is just played by clowns. And I don't mean clowns like they can't play, their musicians. I meant they're putting forth the energy of being like crazy manic people, like clowns in like some surrealistic nightmare. In a City, the second song, is a big prog vibe with just these really jagged grooves that kind of go through it. In a City Lining is what it's called. Excellent song. What is this? There's a song called Is This the Life? Has an almost indie rock vibe. I had like, it has an indie rock vibe with this almost like straightforward guitar sound, but then we get this almost Cure type psych music that comes in. We get these like saxophones come in. Even has like like the Cult at one point. I wrote this song kind of sounds like the Cult, and this is a pretty long song. No, it's not that long. Pretty good song. We get a sad Mellotron sounding thing, an interlude. Dive is quirky, jerky, like new wave pop. Some great songs. What is it? Breakfast. The Breakfast line has this nice like violin interlude that goes into this really nice proggy section at one point. Oh yeah, what is this? RES. That's what the song is called. Upbeat, quirky, really cool new wave with like an almost ska vibe. Absolutely crazy horns. A super super tasty guitar solo. Yeah, there's a lot going on this album, but it has that Mr. Bungle vibe where it's like we can do whatever we want. We're gonna do a bunch of genres, mix it up, head spin you. Like this is like the most herky jerky roller coaster you've ever been on. And every once in a while, when you get a chance to like maybe just like coast for a while, it also sounds really really good. Yeah, solid, solid, solid debut. I'm glad this was the debut because it made me super excited to keep going into it. But yeah, that would be my number 3. Their debut, A Little Man and a House in the Whole World, the Whole World Window. My number 2 is their 5th, Guns, which came out in 1999. This is probably the most balanced of all the albums. You have songs that for cardiacs are relatively straightforward, and you have your sort of requisite weirdness that comes in like at sometimes entire songs, at times sometimes injected into some more normal songs. You have a couple longer tracks which they use that extra length really really well, and so it also shows maybe a more evolved, mature side of them. It is still highly over-caffeinated and highly just like it is identifiably cardiacs. But I do think there is a balance that is struck here between like we can play it straight and still be us and put forth our sort of musical persona and still inject the requisite weirdness. Some really good songs that come throughout. There's Good Cud. What cow doesn't like that? Has some nice hyper upbeat loud, has like the loud soft type thing going for it. Kind of your typical just cardiacs energy, but 5 albums in, it just is really solid and confident. The drums at one point are almost just like straight blast beats. Like that's how over-caffeinated this stuff is, but it's definitely not metal. Jitterbug Junior is really nice jagged guitar intro, sort of this big pounding post-punk type vibe in there, some great keys. The title is kind of apt with being like jittery and all that stuff. There's a really nice middle section in this. This is like a 7.5-minute song in which you have this like organ bass vocal kind of spacey proggy weirdness in the middle that works really good. It like works throughout almost like the entire second half of the song. Had they done more stuff like that throughout their career, I think they could have planted, I don't know what they're generally categorized as, but I think they could have planted a firmer foot in the prog world had they indulged in more of this, because it was pretty interesting stuff. Sleep All Eyes Open just sounds like some weird 80s rock song. The last song on here, Will Bleed Amen. Amen. High energy right out of the start for like a 7.5-minute start song, but then it gets kind of chill and then it changes directions all over the place. Then it goes hard and takes a breather, goes hard, takes a breather, kind of really just manic in that sense. But it works and we get like a nice quiet set of organ vocal ending. Just really good stuff from start to finish. And I really think that by striking the balance and having these more normal moments that are not bad, it's just a calmer side of their songwriting, it makes the other stuff stand out and sound even better because you're allowed to have that sort of like take a breather. So really really enjoyed this album. But yeah, I almost think it's like a good place to start for them. I don't think it's their best, and at this point, but I do think it's a good place to start. And that would be Guns, my second. And my number one is their fourth, Sing to God. This is a double album. It's like 88 minutes of cardiacs. I think I like this the most because I'm most excited to dive back into this and just completely lose myself in way too much cardiacs energy. Like the one that follows it, this is where they start to show that like maybe an understanding that like they can make albums that maybe work better as albums by providing longer songs that have stretches in which they're not as manic and frantic, and maybe like the listener can have a breather, maybe inject a little more straightness into some of the songs, and that's what you get on this. You get 3 songs that are over 8 minutes. One of them closes out the first disc, the other one opens the second disc, and then it's the penultimate track on that same disc. And those really do, even like the first one doesn't come until after 9 songs, but at the end of the first disc, they do provide this really nice contrast to the crazy manic stuff that's going on the rest of the time. And it then makes you appreciate the manic stuff more when you get back to it. The opening, Eat It on the Air, has an almost like Queen-esque theatrical ballady type thing, not like the Queen, but the band Queen. Eat It Up, Worms Hero, great title. Manic, Mr. Bungle meets chaos, punk type energy. Dog Like Sparky, like circus funhouse, post-punk meets the circus in like a funhouse and changes all over the place. It's kind of crazy. Fiery Gun Hand, big sort of opening downbeat into some really skittish sort of like kind of punk rock guitar, really awesome metal shredding guitar solo. Like that's the first 4 songs, and they just start this off on a really, really solid note. And so while you get some crazy stuff and some dark stuff, you even get some like nice soft song called Fairy Mary Mag that has like a soft fairy type vibe. You get a lot of different stuff that by the time you get to that 8.5 minute mark at the end of it, you're just like, I don't know, it's a really good journey. This is kind of a quirky but laid back, kind of squirrely type intro on this huge song, Wireless. It's chill, but then there's this weird kind of piano vibe that goes through it. Long instrumental passage. You get some muted like spoken word type stuff going on. You get this orchestral passage tacked on the end, this weird percussion vibe. There's a lot of weird stuff going on in this song, but it's taken at a slightly more slower pace, more like a prog pace, where we're just going to do a bunch of stuff, but not in the course of 30 seconds. And it just, I don't know, it really, really works. And then the next really long song is the next song, if you're listening on streaming, or, opens up the second disc, the song called Dirty, which is Dirty Boy, which has this awesome rock riff, has some really good energy, just more, we need more of this. It's goes into this much bigger vibe, than Wireless. It's very repetitive, but it just kind of keeps building on the same just kind of repetitive groove over and over and over. A lot more energy than Wireless, but Wireless kind of lets you relax, and so this longer song just lets you really get into it. And then the rest of that, you even got an acoustic little intro to one before you get into some awesome like jaunty type new wave pop for the song. What is that? Odd Even. The melody for Flap Off You Break has this piano intro that reminds me of dun 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 dun, dun, like a smells like Teen Spirit. I don't think that's what I just hummed. But it has this like almost Lady Gaga meets Nirvana vibe to it. Flap Off You Break. Flap Off You Beak, sorry. Which is kind of cool. Quiet as a Mouse, song is like the title. Really, really good. Towards the end, Nurses Whispering Verses. This is the other close to 10-minute song. It's a really nice, like, droning intro for about 40 seconds till you get this, like, big drop into a pretty straightforward, like, guitar driven type groove. Some weird processed either keys or guitars intro, which bring, like, this crazy prog hectic energy. And And then the last 3.5 minutes, we go quiet, get into this really different vibe, these weird, muted, percussive, buzzy noises. But then we still got one more song after that, which is like this almost slow, foundling, almost slow seaside swaying calm groove to like send you home on like a calm moment for this album. I don't know. 12 songs. It was a great ride. I've done it a couple times. Looking forward to it again. I like the long pieces. I think this was by far the most rewarding of the 5 albums I listened to. But that would be their 4th, their only double, Sing to God. That's what they look like in typewritten form. Like I said before, I'm overwhelmed by this band. Like, I'm enjoying it. I understand what I'm listening to, but to really form an opinion, like, I don't quite know where all the twists and turns. Like, if I were driving the car that is these songs, I am not at that point where I know when we're going to make a left turn or a U-turn or slam on our brakes or, you know, hit the ejection button and go somewhere else. I'm not aware of those things yet. So once I get to that point and I can predict and I fully comprehend these songs, I think I'm going to re-rank and see if I come up with something different. But so far, this is just my first impression on a band that has been recommended to me with a lot of enthusiasm. I appreciate the recommendations. So you know who you are. This was for you. Let me know what you think. And if you wish you had never recommended I do this, or if you're still happy. But yeah, man, I highly recommend you check this out if you don't know Cardiacs. It's an insane listen. It really, really is. There's a lot going on, but there's a lot of good stuff going on. So I think it's worth sifting through. Yeah. But all right. And coffee helps. I think if you're trying to go to sleep at night, don't do it. But if you want to wake yourself up, Cardiacs get you out of that cardiac arrest and wake you right up. All right. That's all I got. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, share, comment, do those things. And peace. Talk to you later.